Okay, and then the rest of the folks who are here staying in the main room, um, let's see, I'm gonna assign a couple out still. Feel free to turn on your video if you'd like, and anybody who wants to just kind of get some conversation started. I see Angie Arthur, thank you, Daniel, some familiar faces of leaders here. What's on your hearts and minds today that you would want to discuss in this open group?
So we're still moving forward with trying to run our summer program for youth with disabilities. It is a very, it's a very interesting time because we're always unsure. Everything is unsure. Yeah. We can't predict anything, and it makes it very challenging when you are hopeful to be able to provide a service that's also a fundable service so that you can continue moving your organization forward and to do these services when you're operating in an unknown. And it's very scary right now, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to make it happen. We've got several safety measures in place. We have our contingency plans in place, but again, you just never know, and that's a little scary.
Justin, are you referencing a Goodwill program? Just because I don't know that everybody knows everybody, so I have the pleasure of knowing most people. But can you introduce yourself and just maybe share a little bit about that program, or what could this group here help you with, or what kind of connection could we make, or what are you struggling with? Anything in specific?
So Justin Boger's Goodwill of Central Iowa. The program that we're running is the Summer Youth Work Readiness Program. It's meant for students with disabilities that are typically juniors going into their senior year or looking at that transition year. It is around what's known as the pre-ETS framework, employment. I believe it's employment training supports, something similar to that. But for youth that are trying to learn how to make that leap into adulthood, how to make that leap into either employment or college or short-term or just their next phase in their life. So we're focusing heavily on advocacy skills, on an awareness of what benefits look like, on employability skills through our retail skills training program, on career interest inventories, on knowledge of college life, especially college life for individuals with disabilities. So we've had great relationships with Grandview, with DMAC, with Drake, where they've come in and they've talked with the students about what life is like on campus, off campus, and the supports that are available, which I think is just wonderful because you don't, sometimes get that feeling that these youth can be destined for college or be destined for short-term certification programs. So we're pretty excited. This will be our third year running this particular program, but definitely unique compared to the last two. We're doing the best that we can right now.
Hey everyone, I'm Daniel Hoffman-Zinnel with Proteus, and to kind of piggyback on what Nancy was talking about, one thing that I've been really thinking about over the last week is how can we, as community leaders, amplify the voices of youth, especially the voices of those who are hurting the most right now, which is Black youth, and are there things that we should be thinking about in order to provide space at the table? Do all of our organizations need to have space for youth to serve in board roles, or how are we engaging them? Because they are definitely hurting right now, and if only we engaged them and started having conversations with them, maybe we wouldn't be seeing the things that we're seeing. So that's just something that I've been thinking about. How can we amplify the voices, especially right now, Black youth voices who are hurting, and rightfully so. They are our next generation, and they're wanting to create a world for themselves and for their children that's not like what we're seeing today.
I think a great example of that, Daniel, is the Youth Advisory Council with the Iowa Homeless Youth Center. They're an incredible and powerful group of young adults that are really pushing and making their voice heard. It's been awesome.
I think the one thing that I just wanted to add to that, Justin, and I know Angie Arthur's on here too, I would completely echo that. And I think what is really inspiring to me about that particular young advisory group is how they have been actively involved in distribution of federal funds. I mean, it's just really powerful that young people can engage in decision making, and they should. And I'm just really honored to be able to serve on a committee with a couple of them. It's really powerful.
And that took the leaders of those organizations to make it a priority that those youth were there in those discussions. So kudos to Toby. I don't think he's on this call, but really making sure that those youth were present and getting them there, going to pick them up, whatever they had to do, making sure they were at those meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, thank you both or all of you for bringing this up. And I actually had an email late yesterday from Andrew Allen, just kind of lifting up Toby and IHYC as well as a potential speaker. And, we were focused a little bit differently in this session, but I think, that would be maybe a great opportunity to, to draw in that example of kind of youth co-designed programming. So that maybe that's something that we can also share out in our recap message as a model.
Hey,
Go ahead.
I just want to say that this week we had discussions. We brought in some youth who've been actually at the forefront of the protests, right? And with Senator Janet Peterson, Connie Bozen, and Angela Conlon. And that's what the youth say. They say, you guys are not listening to what we want. And they were very concerned about the prison pipeline. They brought up issues about schools. They brought up issues about housing, you know what I mean? And how this reality is very real for them. So what we've decided to do in collaboration with the county is we're going to be holding a youth focus group or something. And they actually brought up what Daniel said. How do we have spaces at the table? And when the leaders brought up all these people who were speaking on their behalf, they were very, very upset. FYI, do not bring up some leaders and mention some names to them. They're just hurting, and they feel like adults are letting them down, starting from the school district, and they're very upset. So we're trying to see what we can do. We're hoping, I think we need to rush this because like yesterday, I've been talking to kids trying to get their parents and get those kids out of jail. We got to do something, and we cannot wait. We have to do something now.
Thanks for that, Nancy. And I think, I saw Daniel's message in the chat about maybe youth presenting to this group of nonprofit leaders and, this being a good space or opportunity. So, Nancy and Angie and folks who have those relationships, and Toby, obviously, maybe there are some opportunities to imagine, a youth breakout or even a separate kind of youth listening session for this audience. So great. Thank you.
This is Angie Arthur with Polk County Continuum of Care, and we've been very fortunate to be connected and working with and supporting the Youth Action Council. And part of that focus is working with youth that have lived experience with homelessness. And so one of the things that we've made a commitment to do, and I think it's important, is to pay youth for their expertise and their time. If they speak for us on behalf of the Youth Action Council and another organization, that's one of the things that we work to do. That being said, one of the things that we made to do is provide that payment in cash, because that seemed to be the most useful option for a youth and what they wanted. But when you're doing things remotely First of all, that's a challenge because not all the youth have access to the technology needed, as we've talked about before, but also even just receiving payments. So I think it's pushed us to be open to more options of how we're doing this. Is it a Venmo? Is it another cash transaction type of service? And what does that mean? So I think too, definitely making sure that we have that authentic youth engagement and we listen to folks, sharing their plan, and that's even like planning for a meeting. Let's have a little planning time and getting the youth involvement and what they want to work and want discussed and what they want to move forward with action. We've also had some opportunities to do some advocacy at the Capitol with legislators, and so again, I think that was another powerful tool that we've been able to support the youth for those different things. But I echo and support all the different comments that have been made about the actual listening and truly listening and hearing what's being said. I think it takes attention and repeated focus on that because it's easy to fall back into our old patterns, right? And so how can we really continue to make it a priority for us in our organizations and also learn ways to support? Because we have a youth board member representative for our board for Polk County Continuum of Care, but it's not been as an effective role because we haven't been able to support the youth for those services and for their time to be part of that. So what do we need to do in our organization to make those changes to support them and provide technology maybe as needed, or look at meeting times or whatever that might be. So it's a constant focus for us to continue to work on that. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Angie. I think that those are incredibly important points, and the vulnerability of saying we haven't figured it all out, but here's what we do know is really powerful. So thank you for that. Great. Well, I think it's really interesting that we have kind of centered around this idea here in this breakout. I'm always curious when it's like open discussion where this will go and lead, and I'm really excited that it is leading in a direction of what as nonprofit leaders and conveners can we do to amplify that youth voice. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to share or ask on that topic? I think Angie brought up a really good point about youth board engagement and, maybe here's a question, during COVID especially, if you have, people with lived experience on your boards, how are you reaching out to them or listening to them differently during this time? So whether it's a youth board member, someone who, is a graduate of your programming or services, how during COVID are you really amplifying that voice or listening and having some intentional conversation with those individuals?
I think from my perspective, the amplification is trying to push the message that we need people with lived experience on our board. This has been an incredibly trying time for Goodwill of Central Iowa. So I think that this is a good time to reevaluate and find ways that we can do a better job of being responsive to our community, which I think we're doing a great job of, but having people with lived experience and having that voice constantly present, I think is very important.
For those of you who do have lived experience on your board, one of the things that we talk a lot about is wanting to include voices, authentic voices, but also the work that has to be done on the nonprofit side to be sure that, I'm going to use the word, the culture of the organization is prepared to truly listen and engage in a way that is also authentic. And so I'm just curious, I know Daniel and I have talked a little bit about this in the past, but just curious, organizations out there, how have you done this successfully? Because it really is a partnership to ensure that voices are leveraged and integrated and informing processes. And I think it's kind of two areas of work that often needs to be done. Any thoughts or successes that you've seen in that for anyone who's done that work?
This is Angie Arthur. I think one of the things that with the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program and the funding that came with that also came some support and technical assistance. And so we had some really skilled individuals come to share with us and talk about, I mean, we had some honest presentations and conversations about race. We had some conversations about what does it mean for authentic youth in, engagement. We had an education time for our stakeholders about what adultism is, right? And that was a term a lot of folks had not heard about before and what that meant. And so from that perspective, there's that education component, but I think it's also important. You know, we're fortunate that we have some leadership within different organizations and invest in training for youth and engagement with the youth and being positive and supportive. So I think that's also an important piece is when you have leaders within your continuum within your community that do some of that work, and then how we can build off of that or encourage other organizations to participate in that.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to call back all of the other rooms in just a minute or two. So is there any resource just for folks who've stuck around the main room here? Is there anything that your organization is needing, any connection, any issue that you're struggling with right now that you would want support on? Oops, I don't know what I just did. There we go. Oh geez. Okay. I don't know. I did something weird with the screen. I'm sorry. Can you see the screen? I can just see myself.
Yes.
Okay, you can see the screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. That's just me then. Sorry about that. I'm gonna close the rooms here and bring everybody back. And I'm also going to, Sally, I'm just going to pop in the chat box this Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs information, and I'll call that out as folks come back.
That sounds great, Brianne. The only other thing I was going to say in terms of like resources or whatever, I think it's going to be tough. I think this is one of the challenges with youth programming, specifically from the art sector. Like everyone's trying to work with the schools, and everyone's trying to work with Des Moines Public Schools, and then everyone's trying to work with Southeast Polk, and then everyone's trying to work with West Des Moines, and there are so many different efforts, and so there are so many inputs coming in, and then the schools have to respond to all of those different inputs. And I wonder if there's some sort of coordinated way for us to better reach out and say, we want to hear from students, we want to hear from young people, instead of each organization going it alone. So maybe an opportunity is to explore how we can do that outreach in a collaborative way.
Great, thank you.
Hi, this is Bobby Scuro with Women Lead Change. What you just said is so important because we have a conference in Des Moines in late October, and we have a student track, and it is for college students, but it is also for high school seniors who are enrolled in college credit courses. And it's an opportunity, it's a professional conference, it's an opportunity to connect with the professional community. And we don't really have an easy way to reach out to the high schools and promote this to the high school seniors who are taking college credit courses. So I'd love an answer to that, but you're right. I think it was Sally that said it. It's a hit and miss sort of thing. You sort of throw it something out there and hope somebody grabs onto it. And it doesn't seem like it's top of mind right now, but it could be for career, workforce development for kids who want to attend. So I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that. I'd love it, or just feel free to email me. You can find my email address on the Women Lead Change website.
Thanks, Bobby. I've zoomed everybody back. I think they're all kind of rejoining this main area. So I just wanted to maybe recap a few things from the main group that we discussed. Our conversation really centered in the main area around how are we engaging and lifting up youth voice in these opportunities that we are creating for youth, and that the Youth Action Council through IHYC has had some great experience, and learned some best practices on intentionally and meaningfully engaging youth voice through a grant that they received for that purpose. So stay tuned. It sounded like there was some momentum around sharing some of those learnings, and maybe even being able to lift up some youth voice as we move forward. A few final things I did want to share with you today. First, in the chat box, as I was zooming everyone out, I mentioned that the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs is hosting a webinar and discussion on youth summer camps, classes, and workshops. So the details for that Zoom meeting are in the chat. Again, it's at 1 o'clock today. I don't know that our recap message will go out in time. So if that's something that you want to participate in and you don't have the information, you can reach out to the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs, or just grab it from the chat box there. And then I did want to say we are releasing a third round of COVID adaptation grants through the Community Foundation. And so I know we were able to release about $93,000 of funding between rounds 1 and 2. And for this third session, we'll be focusing on service delivery shifts and business and financial planning needs. So I've linked in here the grant making website for our webpage on our site. So if you want to learn more about that adaptation grant opportunity, you can find that there. And then I did want to share a little bit more about what we'll be planning for June. Our community circle conversations will continue throughout this month. Next week, we will be looking at the Power of Possibility framework. And that framework is actually something that came out of, I believe it came out of the recession of 2008, and kind of thinking about strategic alliances and collaboration. That's something that we are going to be sending out in advance, because there are some really great discussion questions that we want to give you some extra time to reflect on. And I'll probably be asking for some of you nonprofit leaders who want to reflect or share on your reflections in our space on June 10th to get a hold of me, and we'll find a way to kind of work through that discussion together. And then on June 17th, we have invited Iowa Coalition for Collective Change to talk about some of the equity work that they've been doing with local nonprofits. And we'll have some of the chairs from Social Capital Crossroads sharing about the For Equity tool in the main room, and opportunities that you can bring that tool and training to your boards. And then on June 24th, we'll be talking about fundraising during COVID-19 with some fundraising consultants. I know that topic was something that those who had taken our poll a couple weeks ago has indicated is top of mind. So we wanted to make sure that we cover that topic. Let's see. And I did have a question in the chat about breaking out various funders on the focus for funding, and that everything is in the air right now. So I think on that topic, that's a really great example of trying to figure out if we can get you some resources. I don't know if it will break out quite that way, but maybe we can kind of collect that information so everybody isn't running in a million different or running in the same direction, just a million different times. So great suggestion, Jack. We'll do what we can to kind of collect that for you. So with that, again, it's been another wonderful opportunity to share time and space together. We look forward to seeing you in June, and we have something else planned for July, we're hoping. But we'll also probably be sending out some new calendar invites for those who have participated, because we know this is beyond our initial set of weeks. So thanks so much. Look forward to connecting. Feel free to enter into the chat any information that you have to share, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.